Today, we're diving into some of the most unbelievable survival stories out there. We're talking about species that were pushed right to the edge, and then, against all odds, they came back.
You know, we tend to think of extinction as, well, final. It's a one-way street, right? Once a species is gone, it's gone for good. But what if that wasn't always the case?
Because we're not going to focus on the stories of loss today. Nope. We are looking at the exceptions, the rebels, the species that just refuse to disappear. Their stories are pretty incredible, and they give us a little bit of hope.
All right, so let's get right into it. The overall picture for biodiversity can seem kind of grim sometimes, but buried in all that are these amazing success stories. Comebacks so dramatic, they actually give us a blueprint for how to do this right.
And here's the thing that makes these stories so powerful. They weren't just flukes or happy accidents. They are the direct result of people deciding to step in and do something. This is an active story of recovery.
So first up, let's look at how we managed to reverse the damage from our own chemical inventions. Because back in the mid-20th century, there was a silent killer out there, and it was wiping out some of our most amazing predators.
Just take the bald eagle. By the 1950s, this national symbol had crashed to just 412 nesting pairs. The culprit? A pesticide called DDT. It made their eggshells so thin they'd break before the chicks could hatch. But then, look what happens. In 1972, DDT gets banned, and almost right away, things start to turn around.
And the result of that ban? Well, by 2019, the population in the lower 48 states had exploded to more than 316,000. Just think about that jump, from about 400 pairs to that. It's honestly one of the greatest conservation wins ever.
And the bald eagle wasn't the only one in trouble. The peregrine falcon, literally the fastest animal on the planet, was also getting hammered by DDT. But after the ban, not only did they recover, they did something amazing. They adapted. They started nesting in cities, trading their cliffside homes for skyscrapers and bridges.
Okay, now for a completely different kind of threat. Sometimes the problem isn't a chemical, it's a living thing that's just in the wrong place. We're talking about invasive species, and they are a huge, huge problem, especially on isolated islands. Here's a perfect example. The Aleutian Canada goose loved nesting on these remote, seemingly safe islands. But then, foxes were brought in for the fur trade, and they just destroyed the goose colonies. The solution was tough, but it was direct. Get the foxes off those islands. And would you look at the results? It's just staggering. They went from only 790 birds in 1975 to over 30,000 by 1999. I mean, this chart says it all. You take away that one huge threat, and the species can come roaring back. We saw the exact same thing play out with the tiny monodo gecko. It lived on this one little island, and invasive rats were about to wipe it out. So conservationists went in, got rid of the rats, and poof, the gecko population bounced right back. It just goes to show how effective this strategy can be. But what happens when a species is so far gone that just removing the threat isn't going to cut it? Now we're going to look at some cases that needed serious, hands-on intervention to pull them back from the absolute brink.
The story of the American bison is it's hard to even wrap your head around. In 1820, there were something like 30 million of them. 70 years later, fewer than 1,000. This wasn't a slow decline. This was a systematic slaughter that nearly wiped them off the face of the earth.
This is where people had to step in and fast. Folks like Theodore Roosevelt realized what was happening. They gathered up the last few survivors and created protected areas, like the National Bison Range, to give them a safe place to live. It was basically a last-ditch effort to save them.
All right, get ready for another wild story. Over on the Galápagos island of Hispaniola, the giant tortoise population had shrunk to this, 14. Just 14 animals left, 2 males and 12 females. I mean, extinction felt like a sure thing.
But then, there's this number, over 800. What on earth could that number represent? Well, it represents the impact of one single, very special animal.
His name was Diego. He was over 100 years old, and he became the absolute superstar of a captive breeding program. Over the years, this one tortoise fathered more than 800 babies. He basically repopulated his entire island by himself. He single-handedly saved his subspecies. It's just unbelievable.
So after hearing all these amazing stories, what's the lesson? Well, it turns out they're not just a bunch of one-off miracles.
If you look closely, you start to see a pattern, a kind of blueprint for how to pull a species back from the brink.
And here it is. It's pretty straightforward, really. Step 1, find the biggest threat and stop it. Ban the chemical, get rid of the invasive predator. Step 2, protect their home. Step 3, if you have to, breed them in captivity, like they did with Diego, and reintroduce them. And finally, step 4, everyone has to work together. None of this happens in a vacuum.
So, the big takeaway here is one of cautious optimism. Look, bringing a species back is never easy, but it's not impossible. These stories are proof that when you combine good science with the will to actually do something about it, you can achieve some pretty incredible things.
And that kind of leaves us with one final really important question. We've seen that it can be done. We know the playbook. The challenge now is to take these lessons and apply them to all the other species out there that need our help. So, who's next?